Well, hi YouTube. This is part of Non-Fiction November and the Physics 100 books, which is almost at an end now, so I've got a few books to get through. But I've just finished this, Jane Austen Alive by Claire Tomalin. Now, first of all, I absolutely love Jane Austen. I've read all the books and all her short stories. I lived in Winchester for 4 years and I was at uni, so I visited her grave in Winchester Cathedral, and where she passed away, down College Street, I went past it all the time. I didn't know she passed away there until I actually went to uni there, and I was like, oh cool, result, bonus. So first, another thing though is I'm not a literary snob for Jane Austen. I love adaptations of her work. She is not above criticism in any shape, way or form. Every year at uni I wrote an essay on Pride and Prejudice, but I'm not a snob when it comes to Austen. I love adaptations of her work. It's all in the public domain, so it's just easy to adapt her work, and I think it's fantastic. There's Pride and Prejudice I enjoyed, because Pride and Prejudice, the Bollywood version, is one of the few which actually has Collins and Charlotte Lucas in a loving relationship. Charlotte Lucas, or her character, makes it clear that she absolutely adores Mr. Cooley, or Collins, and it makes her very happy, and she has a husband who adores her, and which is very, very rare. Another good one too is the version Pride and Prejudice and Zombies book, better than the film, okay? Because once again, it has, spoiler territory here if you have not read Pride and Prejudice and Zombies. Charlotte Lucas is bitten by a zombie, she's turning. Mr. Collins, no, he's not stupid, he's no diss, he still marries her, she's turning. When she's fully turned and he has to kill her, he heals himself. So basically, if Charlotte's going to hell because she was a zombie, Collins is meeting her there. Okay, that sounds quite twisted in a way, but I thought it was quite romantic that he would do that, because he generally loved her. That is so rare in any adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. And there's also Pride Sonata, which is a updated version of Sense and Sensibility, which is based on two Mexican-American young women, one of them played by Alexia Vega, and they have to essentially go through the same kind of experience as the sisters do in Sense and Sensibility, and get in touch with their heritage too, because they never really focus on the fact that they were Mexican-American, and it's quite nice how they're kind of being reintroduced to their culture, if you will, and learn to enjoy life and identify as Mexican-Americans and going through the same kind of problems that the sisters do. So I absolutely love that version. There's Mansfield Park, there's North Hangary, and there is Lady Susan, which I'm going to mention in this, which was filmed as Love and Friendship, which is actually a different book to Jane Austen wrote. I know it's all over the place, okay, all over the place. However, Jane Austen Alive by Claire Tomalin. Now, I love this book because it is just so well researched. It is one of these books where the author went through Jane Austen's, not just her life, but her family's life and history, trying to get to the point where she got where she was. She was the daughter of a clergyman, and her parents were teachers, if you will. Her home was an all-boys school, okay, for a while. So she grew up in that kind of environment. She was surrounded by her father's 500 books, which she studied religiously. And it's you can read this as, you know, understanding Jane Austen as a person other than the author. And it's absolutely brilliant, because obviously she's a woman in the very early 18th century, trying to get to grips with what it is to be a woman in the 18th century and the choices that she had. And it is kind of motherhood and family, because at the time there wasn't that voting. You couldn't like literally earn your own money. Well, you could, but obviously, okay, anything you owed or had, the moment you got married, it would go to your husband. It was the law then. That was the law, okay? And so it's kind of like married with children in this relationship, or liberated and free, but potentially penniless. So many women of her generation who didn't get married became governesses because of financial reasons. Obviously Jane Eyre, which actually came later, but that kind of thing. So this bit I absolutely love, because one thing this author does, it doesn't go into detail with Pride and Prejudice or Sense and Sensibility, because adaptations and essays have been done probably since those books came out. It focuses on Lady Susan, Love and Friendship, Emma, Mansfield Park, Persuasion. Mansfield Park and Persuasion actually came out after she passed away. So during her lifetime, it was Pride and Prejudice, Sense and Sensibility, and Emma. So, hey. So, yeah, so this is, it focuses on her work, which doesn't really get much focus on. And there's this bit about Lady Susan, okay? Or if you've seen the film Love and Friendship, which I actually enjoyed, okay? Because Lady Susan is a novella, and there's this bit at the end, which I absolutely love. The exercise is brilliant, so brilliant that Austen may have been frightened herself and felt she had written herself into a dangerous corner and been too clever, too bold, too black. She set the story aside, and though she copied it out a decade or so later, never tried to have it published, and was clearly not encouraged to return it by anyone in the family. Had she felt some interest and pride in it, she would have kept it up. The fact that she did not follow it out with anything remotely resembling it suggests that he decided to censor the part of her imagination that interested itself in women's wickedness, and particularly sexual wickedness. Not until Mansell Park and Mary Crawford did a spark of Lady Susan take a little fire again, only to be quickly re-extinguished. But the fire was there, however, banked down. Quite interesting when you think about it. Now, Lady Susan is a ferocious, empowered woman who fights to get her just what she wants for herself and her daughter, and she does it brilliantly. Read it, okay? Or hey, even watch the film; they're good too. But there's this idea, okay, of even at a very early time, Austen has shown her power as a writer to the fact, okay, that being a very, very naive female, what her mind is capable of is so terrifying that she has to back it down and go into kind of like a safe area, if you will, okay, to kind of continue her writing. And it is quite funny how Austen started all her works, okay, like Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility are two big novels, when she was in like her early 20s. But yeah, it took them like 20 years to become published. Now, First Impressions is the true name of Pride and Prejudice, okay, and it was originally rejected and sent back and not even being read by a publisher, which then reworked it into Pride and Prejudice, which is probably the biggest disaster anyone who ever, you know, rejected a book has done. But by reworking it, turned it into Pride and Prejudice, one of the most popular novels. Now, one thing it does focus on quite well, okay, is a relationship with a gentleman called Thomas Lefroy. Now, this was actually established more in a film called Becoming Jane, where the film turns it into a proper relationship. They basically just met a few times and they communicated, and maybe Thomas Lefroy thought he was in love with her. And he said later on in his life he did love her with the naive way that a gentleman would, as you do. He was quite young. But obviously she had no money, he had no money at the time, and he had to marry well. That's the way it worked then within the classes. But the thing is, after this thing, the author makes it clear, Claire Tomalin makes it clear, that if she had said yes to Thomas Lefroy, her literary input, because he had many, many children with his wife, who he did marry several years later, we wouldn't have any of the books. But afterwards, the book receives a very, very kind of melancholy air. It's kind of like the biggest kind of what if she said yes. Because from this book, I got the impression that Jane Austen, she had the freedom to do what she wanted with her life, though she was quite restrained, obviously because of her gender. But it's quite melancholy. You know, it's kind of like she's made this choice not to have the marriage and the children, basically live a spinster life. But the biggest what if, when all her peers were settling down and having children, that's a big question. Her sister Cassandra, they were devoted to each other, and they all said that they walked around in town wearing matching bonnets, and that way it makes them invisible. Because Cassandra was due to get married, but then her fiancé was killed, and she lived a life as a widow without ever being married to become one, and a early widowhood, if you will, and she never got married herself. So there's this kind of sad air that guarding these two sisters, and it is really, really sad. Which you can't get over some ways, you know what I mean? Her literary output was fantastic, and she did a lot. And this book does talk about how she wrote basically on scraps of paper and journals, and she put it all together. And the first version of Pride and Prejudice, it had like a typo in it too, so she had to go back and rework it, publishing what it was in these times. But it is quite sad as well because of what she died from. Now, this book gives an idea of she died of an lymphoma, sorry, and but in College Street. Now I'm gonna read. This is her. Here's the story of how she died as well. This is page 271. This is from her, I think, cousin Mary's diary. Jane breathed her last half an hour after 4 in the morn. Only Cass and I were with her. Henry came. It was Henry surely who sought permission for their sister to be buried in the cathedral, splendid as it is. She might prefer the open churchyard at Steventon or Chawton. But Henry knew the bishop from his recent examination for ordination. I kind of like the fact that, in some respects, maybe her family were onto something. Her family, they were her biggest cheerleaders, if you will. They were her biggest supporters. And I like the fact that they arranged for her to be buried in the cathedral, as if anticipating in years to come how she will be respected. This is a very, very well researched and fantastic read about, it's the melancholy air as well within this. It's kind of like Jane Austen wrote so many fantastic books within her own lifetime, and the two that came out afterwards. I absolutely love Persuasion, and due to the fact it's so different. And Emma Woodhouse in Emma, I absolutely can't stand her. In Mansell Park, Fanny's passivity annoyed me, and oh, that's quite funny. In this book, it annoyed everyone within her own lifetime too. As soon as she brought out Mansell Park, virtually every single critic went after Fanny Price, because even the most genteel ladies of the day hated her. Critics hated Fanny Price. I love that. You know, it's true. Out of all the versions of Austen, Mansell Park is one of the least well adapted. There was that version a few years ago with Johnny Lee Miller. That was pretty good. So, I do recommend this book if you're an Austenite. It puts things in a new perspective. It makes it clear what it was like to be a woman in the early part of the 18th century or mid-18th century. And it is just quite melancholy of its research, if you will. So, Claire Tomalin, Jane Austen, A Life. Highly, highly recommended. So, thanks for watching, YouTubers. Sign off and take care. Bye now.